friends. Welcome to the Pain-Free Birth Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Welton, a certified doula, childbirth educator, and mother of three. In this space, we'll hear positive, supernatural, and yes, even pain-free birth stories from women just like you. We'll explore the deeply spiritual side of childbirth and how God designed women's bodies brilliantly for birth. Let's get started. Welcome to the show, ladies. Today I'm interviewing Jessie Ritter. She is a beautiful woman that I met at Her Sacred Sexuality Retreat who told me her birth story with her second child that she had as an unplanned home birth. And you guys, this story just blew me out of the water. I said, I have to have you on my podcast. And so here she is, ready to share her story of her unplanned, very fast home birth with her second child. Welcome to the show, Jessie.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I remember listening to about 1,000 birth stories while I was pregnant, and they were just so inspiring and helpful. So it feels really cool to get to be one of those stories.
Oh, I'm so glad. And your story is going to be such an encouragement to women because you had a hospital birth with your first, correct?
Yes.
And it didn't quite go the way you wanted. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'll give you the quick version. We have a really cool hospital here that is very pro natural birth, but it's still a hospital. So they have like their normal birth wing and they have something called the nesting area. And it's where you go if you want to have an unmedicated birth. And then the NICU's also right there. So it just felt like a really good middle ground. But
there's always buts.
I was very much under the impression that we were going to get to the hospital and they were going to leave us alone. And I think since I was there, they got a Bluetooth monitoring system, but I think they were advertising it and didn't quite have it ready yet when I gave birth. And so we got to the room and it was beautiful and they had a tub and a bed and a bathroom and a shower. But I wanted to be in the tub because I was freezing. And then I feel like every 30 minutes, the nurses came in and wanted to put me on the bed and put the monitoring strap around my belly. And
oh, really?
Yes.
Put the whole strap, not just the Doppler?
Yes, the whole strap.
Every 30 minutes.
Maybe it was every hour. It felt, I honestly don't know, but it felt constant. And so
That's
then
crazy.
I get out of the tub and I was freezing and I had to have a contraction on the bed with this thing wrapped around me. And then I was like, please get me back in the tub so I can warm up. And then you were like, wet, dry, get out, do this, wrap this thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Gosh, that's crazy.
I thought we were going to go and truly just do our own thing. And it felt like somebody was always in the room. And it just,
that's so hard.
They were all kind, but it just was not what I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just for those who might not know, what she's describing is continual electronic fetal monitoring, where they put a strip around your belly and there's a monitor on it, and it's usually connected to wires. So you're hooked up to machines. It's monitoring your contractions continuously. Now, the alternative that I usually recommend if you want to have an unmedicated and a mobile labor where you can move around is intermittent fetal monitoring. And that's when someone comes in your room with a little handheld Doppler and they listen to your baby's heartbeat. And that's what you typically will have if you go to, say, a midwifery appointment. Your midwife or doctor will check your baby's heart tones using a Doppler. So they can do that in labor and you can request it. You don't have to be hooked up to this continuous electronic monitor machine your whole labor. But that's so bizarre to me that they were coming in and doing that every 60 minutes. Because usually if they're going to come in, they're going to use a Doppler. And then they have the Bluetooth that it just stays on and they don't have to come in and check. And that has no wires. So those actually are really great too. I love those for women who if you need continuous monitoring, but you have the ability to move around and some of them even let you get in the tub or the water. I still don't recommend continuous monitoring if you're low risk and you don't need it because it can cause a lot of red flags. But quick overview for those who might be curious. Wait, which one should I get? Which one do I want? Depends on your situation.
All the options. So So they said, like, we will do intermittent monitoring, which I
Yeah.
thought great. But then when they did it intermittently, they hooked me up to all the straps and wires, and it was such a process every time. So
That makes no sense. Their Doppler must have been broken or something.
I
That's
don't
the
know.
only
So just make
explanation.
sure you're very clear on what
Yes.
the monitoring system is
Yes. It
because
makes a big difference in your birth, for
it,
sure.
I think it made all the difference. So
Yeah. Especially when you're expecting something and that's not what happens, even though they promise that. That can be such an annoying little thing that you're thinking about throughout your whole labor. At the end of the day, that birth, did it go well? What happened? Like, how did you feel about it at the end?
yeah, so it was kind of just scary overall. And I had a doula for that birth, but her rule was I'll meet you at the hospital. She didn't want to come to our house. So I was very like alone in the first part of birth. This is my first baby. I had no idea what was happening. And it was very, very painful contractions very quick. It's like they started and they were 2 minutes apart and they were super intense.
Wow.
And I did that for 24 hours.
24 hours.
It,
Holy cow.
I'm
Did you
like gonna
get an
start.
epidural?
Yes, I'm like gonna start crying. It was horrible.
Oh,
So I was so committed and I should have been more flexible because I did not need to do that for that long. It just wasn't working.
you're one of those women who are like, I have my goal. I am
Oh
focused.
gosh.
I will accomplish it. Do not get in my way.
I know. So it had just been so long and I was like at an like a 7 or an 8 for like 8 hours. And I just felt so stuck and I felt like
Wow.
nothing was working. So then they ended up breaking my water. And then it still wasn't moving. And so then I got an epidural. I took an hour and a half nap. I woke up and had a baby, and it was fine.
Yep.
But it
This
was
is this
just,
is one of those situations where the epidural can definitely come in handy.
yes, I'm so glad I did it. But it was just so long and so intense. And then the birth, basically, my OB was on the way to the hospital to do a C-section
Mm,
because I had been where I was for so long. And I think his heart wasn't doing great. It's like, we want to get this baby
yeah.
out. And so the nurse came in with like the biggest, I don't know, like football coach attitude, like, we are getting this baby out. You have 10 minutes until your doctor gets here. He better be born. I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh, that's so threatening.
It
She's trying
was
to probably help you and save you from a cesarean, but that's holy cow, that's intense.
She was trying to get me what I wanted, but it was so intense and so loud and so aggressive. And that is just not my style. And then she was so hands on. Oh, they had an OB who was at the hospital at the time who was actually there for his birth. My doctor I had been seeing didn't make it. And just like hands all up in there, baby shampoo, like just so hands on. I was like, this is not what I wanted. And they're like screaming at me to hold my breath and push. And in my head, I'm like, no, you have to keep breathing. And then they're yelling at me for breathing. And
Oh my
he
goodness.
was born and he was fine. And I didn't have to have a C-section. I did not want to have surgery, but it was not the peaceful, natural birth that I had hoped for.
Yes. And just in case of those of you who are wondering, don't worry, it gets better. The next story is completely redeeming. So, for those of you who have had not great first birth experiences, this is something you want to keep listening to. Don't get scared away. Um,
Yes.
and unfortunately, that's a very normal birth experience for a lot of women today that, has interventions. It has yelling and coached pushing. It has, maybe you get stalled or stuck, or your OB's coming and threatening cesarean if you don't get baby up by a certain time. Like these are all very typical stories, unfortunately, today. But you got to the end of that and you must have realized, okay, I'm not doing that again, or I'm going to do this differently next time. What changed for you after that birth, and how did you prepare for your second?
Well, I found Karen. So I
It's all, and we know the end of the story.
there you
It
go.
all changed from then.
But I think the first thing that shifted was my mindset because I went into my first birth very confident that I could have a natural birth because women are strong. We
Hmm.
can do anything. There is no pain you couldn't endure for 2 or 3 days, which is
And you
true.
certainly exemplified that.
And
Women are strong. We can do anything. Yeah, we were
that is what
talking
happened.
about this mindset shift in the mom culture that, there's even a quote by Penny Simkin who says, the greatest truth is not that birth is hard, it's that women are strong,
Hmm.
right? And I'm like, what if it's not about strength?
Yes.
And you were like, yes, that was exactly my mindset for my first.
Yes. So I went from women are strong, I can do anything, to this is going to be easy. This is going to be peaceful. I don't have to be strong.
Oh,
And
so good.
everything changed.
Yes.
It
I
was
love
great.
that mindset shift from women have to be strong. Women are strong. Women can do this. And of course, that's true. But if we didn't have that mindset that we had to be strong and endure, and we energetically showed up differently to labor, how much could that shift birth?
Yeah.
Goosebumps.
And honestly, that was a shift much bigger than the birth experience. I mean, that carried on to every other aspect of my life. And
Wow.
truly, this pregnancy was like the start of chapter 2 for me in like my whole adult life.
I
And
literally
it
have
was just
goosebumps right
awesome.
now. So
Talk about a redemptive birth.
you created this shift in your mindset that said it doesn't have to be hard. That was so hard. I don't want to have it be hard again. This can be easy.
Mhm.
And then what did you do to prepare?
So I took Pain Free Birth, which was awesome. And I read several books you suggested. Supernatural Childbirth.
Yeah.
Yes, that was just beautiful. And it was the first time that I really believed, oh, this is possible.
Hmm.
Like you see all those birth videos, but they have like the peaceful music over them and they're all cut. I'm like, this is not real.
This is edited.
We got the best 10 seconds. This was
It's true.
12 hours of horribleness. And it was the first time I was reading, and it's like, maybe it is real. Maybe it can be real. I read Ina May Gaskin's book as well.
Yeah, I love that one.
So I felt very informed and confident in a different way than I did the first time, which was great. And then just this whole body energy shift, really, a lot of what you talk about. I remember you talking about dancing. That was just so big.
Mm.
And I remember I started dancing every night for about a month before she was born and moving.
Wow.
And there was lots of hip circles on the ball and there was lots of yoga. I remember with my son, I did a really awesome like weight training prenatal program and I loved
Mm.
it. But man, I even that, I want to be strong. I want to be ready. I want to have the strength to get through this.
Yeah.
And this time I didn't do that program again. I did just prenatal yoga. I actually found a studio in New York City, a prenatal yoga studio, and they do Zoom classes that you can come to live.
Mm.
And the teachers were fantastic. And so I
Wow.
just moved so much more and just the whole mindset of being open the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's beautiful that you cultivated such a different experience for yourself. Like not just in your mindset, but in your language, in your movement that you did with your body, in your workouts. Like just
yeah.
such a different experience that you're leading into. I love that.
Yeah. So there was education, there was movement. I remember hearing in my first birth about drinking red raspberry tea and eating all these dates. I did not do that the first time. Like, this is gross. I don't want to do this. This time, the second time, I was like, I will do anything. So I was down in the raspberry tea. I was eating all the dates. I have no idea if it made a difference or not, but
Well,
maybe.
it sounds like it did
Yes.
based on your birth.
And then visualization was the other part. So that was
Mm.
huge. And I remember that that's part of your course. That was one of the activities. You said visualize your birth and any part of the story that you get scared or stuck on, rewrite what it looks like.
Yeah.
And so I just imagine this really peaceful labor at home, easy contractions. And then every time it was time to get in the car and go to the hospital, I just stopped. The story stopped because I wanted to have a home birth for my second. I did not want to go back to the hospital because it just wasn't as peaceful and natural as I'd hoped it would be. And my husband was not on board. He said, we were there. You needed all the interventions. We needed to be there. I was like, but what if we weren't there and I wouldn't have needed it?
Mm.
And he was just not getting on board.
Oh,
So
that's so hard.
our plan was to do the same thing. And I was a little more confident going to the hospital because I thought their monitoring system was going to be better this time, less invasive, but I still didn't want to go. And so every time I told myself the birth story in my head, I got to, and then it's time to go to the hospital. But what if we don't make it and she's just born in 10 minutes? And that was exactly what happened. So the power of visualization, I am telling you, I just cannot believe that it happened exactly like I imagined. And I told myself this story every day for
Are you
months.
kidding me? Like you visualized and told yourself the story of your birth where you were getting ready to go to the hospital, you didn't make it, and she was born at home, and that literally happened.
Yes. My husband says I tricked him. He's like, you were going to have your home birth no matter what. And it really wasn't intentional. I didn't plan on staying home and not making it, but subconsciously, I probably did because
Didn't you
that's what
even
happened.
joke around with your midwife? Like she was like, I feel like we're not going to make it in time the way
I
we're
didn't have a
talking.
midwife.
Oh, right, because you're going to the hospital.
I mean, I didn't have anyone. I had hired a doula. And so I had been texting her all day, but she didn't make it. It was just me and my husband. So I guess maybe I should start at actual labor, start at the
Yeah,
beginning
because
of
you said it was like a half-hour birth.
kind of. So I have to say, this whole thing was supernatural. She was due on Saturday and she was born on a Wednesday before. But I knew that because my son had been telling me for 2 weeks, she's going to come Wednesday. She'll be here Wednesday,
Really?
just so confidently. And I'm like, I
Wow.
think he just knows.
Yeah.
All the way to when we were picking her name, we're like, should she be named Joy? Should she be named Rose? He didn't really say anything. Should we name her Ava? He goes, oh, yes, she's Ava. Like almost in a, he remembered her way.
Wow. Wow.
I know that
Shivers.
sounds kind of crazy, but I just feel like they were connected. So it's like he already knew what her name was. And then he told me she'll be born Wednesday. It's like, okay, she'll be born Wednesday. So Wednesday morning at about 4 a.m., I started having contractions, but they were so easy to breathe through, not painful, just a feeling, just like a tight, like wraparound hug feeling. And then it was gone. And they were like 20 minutes apart. So with my first birth, they were super close, super strong right at the beginning. Part of me thought, okay, this is nothing. We're going to do this for 4 days because they were 20 minutes apart and easy all day long.
Wow. And you're
And I
like, well,
was,
this is not what the labor is supposed to feel like.
yeah, or maybe it is.
Or maybe it is. Yeah, like what yeah, that's so funny. It was so different. So
So
it's
I
not
was just
painful. It's every 20
not
minutes.
painful, not painful,
Yeah.
not close together. I was still taking care of my son, making him lunch. We had like finished meal prepping. It was just a very normal day. And every 20 minutes, I just paused and took a deep breath.
Hmm.
But it had been like that kind of all day. So around 5 o'clock, my son went to play with my mom, and my husband and I took a walk. We live right by the water. So we walked to the boat launch, and it's about half a mile from the house. It was such a beautiful date, I guess. It was so wonderful to have this moment with him before she was born. I will look back on that as just such a beautiful little walk together. So we
Hmm.
went all the way to the boat launch, about half a mile. On the way back, I can, looking back, I can tell the contractions started getting more intense because I was like, I'd like squat down on the side of the road and then stand up, and I was breathing deeper, but still nothing that felt painful. It's like, okay, something's happening, but we're fine.
Hmm.
So we get home, we make this steak dinner, steak and baked potatoes and
Love
big dinner.
it.
And I didn't think anything of it. And my son's here and we're all having dinner together. My sister-in-law comes over with like a couple gifts and I'm just sitting on the birth ball, like totally fine. And then we were at the table and I started feeling like I had to vocalize. So I was just like, oh, and my son was totally freaked out. So I was like, I still feel fine, but I can tell I need to do something that he doesn't know what's happening. It's like, so I'm going to go lay down in our bedroom. You guys just do your thing. I'm fine. So I went and I laid down, and then I could tell it was changing just a little bit. Still not painful, but I could tell they were stronger. And I had three that were 5 minutes apart. So I
Mm,
had been texting my doula all day, being like, stuff's happening, but it's no big deal. We're totally fine, having a
yeah.
normal day. And then I texted her and I said, hey, I had three contractions. They're 5 minutes apart. Maybe we should think about going to the hospital soon. I'm
Hmm.
still fine, but
And that's
I
typically
think,
normal when they're like 3 to 5 minutes apart. They say you want to go to the hospital. And of course,
yeah,
nobody's birth follows like a perfectly linear trajectory,
yeah,
but that's a general rule of thumb. So you're thinking,
yeah.
okay, things are getting intense. It might be time to head in.
So I had those three contractions, literally just those three. I texted her, and the fourth one, my water broke. And I screamed. That one was painful.
It didn't hurt.
But it was, oh my gosh, but it was everything. It was the whole labor in one contraction. I heard a pop. I felt her move down. I mean,
Mm.
I could feel everything, and it was so clear. Like she was here, she was ready.
Like she's up
And
here and now she's down here.
yes, it was just everything in one contraction. Of course, I'm a super neat freak, so I was like out of bed on the toilet in about half a second. I am not dealing with this.
Contain the
So all of
mess.
a sudden I'm on the yes. So all of a sudden I'm in the bathroom, like water breaks, mostly contained. It was great. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think like that was so obvious. And it was really nice because in my first birth, I never knew what was happening.
Hmm.
Nothing felt clear, and that could not have been more clear. Heard a pop, felt her move. We are here. And
Now,
so then
did you
I'm
know,
sitting
okay,
on the
she's
toilet.
coming, this is imminent, or what were you thinking? Because you've been visualizing this birth that turns into an
Yes.
accidental home birth, hope kind of like subconsciously priming your brain for this experience. Were you like,
Yes.
oh, this is gonna happen, or was that not really on your mind?
So I had two thoughts. Either she's coming right now, or I'm going to be in intense labor for 24 hours again. And there's no way I'm doing this
Wow. Yeah.
because
Because how
it
how
was
would you
it
know?
was very intense, but that was what it felt like the whole time with my son. And I just
Mm,
thought I have to get to the hospital because I am not doing this again for 24 hours. But
right.
then I also thought this is different. I think
What if she
I
comes
don't know
right
what's
away?
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like almost a new,
So
like a
I
whole new birth experience.
Yeah, it was so new. So I remember I'm so glad I watched all these birth videos because my mind is not working at this point. I'm very much in labor land, but instinctively I had seen so much. I just had in my head what to do. I was like my
Mm.
own doula. So I turned
Yes.
around backwards on the toilet and I had maybe three contractions there and they were so intense. And at that point, I'm still by myself. My husband is like outside the house. So I'm
I
like
am so proud of
trying,
you right now. Like, I want to just cheer you on. That is
thank
awesome.
you. I'm just like, I know I'm okay, but also I would really like somebody here with me. So I'm like screaming as loud as I can because I know there's no way I can walk outside. I'm hoping he can hear me and be like, oh, what's that? Maybe I should go check on her. So eventually he comes inside. And I remember this position was so helpful. I'm sitting backwards on the toilet and he comes and he stands behind me and I put my hands on his shoulders and like
Like,
pulled up.
yeah.
And I know some places have like a birth bar or stuff like that, but I just pulled up on his shoulders behind me and It was the only thing that felt good in that contraction. And mind you, these are like 3 contractions I had on the toilet like this. And
That's a great position to birth in. Anything where you're pulling up and like releasing down. I
mhm,
feel like your body just goes like and releases in that. It's something about the mechanics of that position are just so powerful for like letting baby just descend. So I love that you intuitively did that, and your husband was obviously a strong guy to be able to just kind of like hold
yes,
you there.
yes. And then he says, okay, I'm going to pack a bag. We're going to go to the hospital. I'm like, no, we are not. He's like, yes, we have to go to the hospital. Like, there is no way I am getting in a car right now.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so he still like runs outside and puts a bag in the car. And then I'm screaming at him again. I'm like, you have to stay in here. It's like, I have to check on Silence. I'm like, he's fine.
Like
Not
this
gonna run
baby.
away in the next 5 minutes.
You're like, this
So he
baby's
still,
coming now.
I know. So he still goes outside in the living room and puts on Mickey Mouse, turns the TV up as loud as it goes. So my son's just on the couch with Mickey Mouse blaring. I'm in the bathroom. He comes back and I'm still sitting there. And he's like, that's her head. She is actually coming right now. I'm like, oh, well, thanks. I'm glad I convinced you.
Like he can see her head as you're sitting on
Yes.
the toilet
Yes.
backwards.
So then he says, you have to get in the tub. And I was like, I don't think I can move. So he just picked me up and put me in the tub. And I'm so glad he did because we were not prepared for a home birth in any way. So he put me in the tub. He ran like 6 inches of warm water. And I think my stepdad showed up and in the next couple minutes and is sitting with my son and my mom's on the way because he had called him. This is still only like 5 minutes that I'm talking about here from water breaking to where we are is
Yeah.
very quick.
So like water breaks, you dash to the toilet, you get on the toilet backwards, you have a few contractions, you scream for your husband to come. He comes, he turns on Mickey Mouse, he comes back, puts you in the tub. This is all like 5 minutes.
Yes.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then I'm in the tub and he says, okay, get on your back. And I said, I will not be doing that. And he listened. It was so great because he was just trying to help from what he knew is normal.
Yeah.
And I knew what I wanted. So I got on my hands and knees and he got in the tub behind me. And it was so wonderful. He just like, her head was already there. So he just like put his hand on her head, just like supporting her.
Hmm.
And I want to say I pushed, but it wasn't an active push. I think it was the fetal ejection reflex because there was nothing in my head that said push now. And I don't remember like working to get her out. It was just like a contraction and she came out
Hmm.
halfway. So her head is out, maybe one of her shoulders is out. I don't really know. And then I said, "Don't pull on her. Just wait. Don't move." So he just held her little head. I just didn't move. I just took a breath. And then, I don't know, 15 seconds later, another contraction came and she came out.
Wow.
It
And he caught
was,
her in the tub.
and he caught her and handed
Ah.
her right to me. It was so beautiful. Beautiful because he was so calm once he stayed in the room with me. He was so calm and did so good and just did exactly what I asked.
Mm,
You know, can you imagine being in the hospital? Please don't pull on her. Please don't touch her. And you
yeah.
don't know if they're going to listen.
Yeah.
He just held her little head. And he was so calm when this was incredibly not what he wanted. And then also because I had had an epidural, I didn't feel my son being born. So that was the part I was most nervous about was this infamous ring of fire. I
Mm,
didn't feel anything like that. There was
wow.
no pain in pushing her out. If there was any pain, it was those like 4 contractions from water breaking to her being born because they were just so strong, but not any kind of scary pain. And then her
Mm,
being born just felt good, felt like such a relief. Just
wow.
crazy.
It
It was
sounds
so
like
beautiful.
It sounds like it happened so quickly. And normally, in a really fast, precipitous birth like that, it feels chaotic or even traumatic for women. But it sounds like you did so much preparation and visualization to prepare your heart for that exact experience.
Yeah.
Maybe guided by Holy Spirit, I'm pretty sure, or, God, it was in that mix. And so it was like your heart knew, like subconsciously, your whole body was in alignment, your heart, your spirit, your soul. And so when it happened that way, the way you're describing it, even though it was so fast and so intense in those final moments, it sounds like it was also so peaceful and
It
so meant to be.
it was so peaceful. Yeah, it was these easy contractions at like 4 in the morning. 5 o'clock we went for this walk. They picked up a little bit. It was 7:45 when my water broke and she was born at 8 p.m. It
Wow.
was just it was so easy, so peaceful, and then she was just here. It was incredible.
And your body just pushed her out. No
Yeah.
theatrics, no intense pushing. No, and they were coaching you to push with your first. How long were you pushing for?
Man, that all seems like a blur, but it can't have been long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but I really don't know. And that's part of the pain of my first birth is I just can't remember. It was just this haze of pain and confusion and where are we and why are these nurses back and what's happening now and what pain medicine did you just give me? Like I just can't remember much.
Yeah.
And then with her, everything is so clear.
Yeah.
And my body felt everything so clearly. And I can remember, and it was so peaceful. Truly, truly redemptive.
Wow. What was it like after she was born? Did you call 911? Like, was your husband freaking out? Like, what was postpartum like when you have an accidental home birth?
It was really funny because I feel like I had watched so many of these videos. I felt so confident in the birth. And then
Right.
I was
And let
like,
me just say, like, I love that you felt so confident in what your body was doing and you weren't like, oh my gosh, what do we do? How do we need somebody. We need emergency, call 911. Like the fact that
no.
you just knew, like, this is so natural and my body knows exactly what to do. Like, to me, that is like the greatest win. Like, as someone who took my course to just have that kind of confidence to be able to birth at home with nobody around but your husband and no, like, I got this, babe. My body knows what to do. Like, I have done my job.
It was
You did your
incredible.
job. You did your job.
Thank you. I mean, it was incredible. It was truly so intuitive.
Hmm.
And then there was this moment where just sitting there in the tub with this baby girl in our arms, and I was like, oh, wait, what do I do now? So my mom and my stepdad were staying in our neighborhood, literally right around the corner. So maybe it only took them 5 minutes to get over. But between the time my husband called and they showed up, she was already born, which I'm so glad because my mother is a neonatologist. So
Stop.
she takes, yes. So if you don't know what a
Like God set
neonatologist
this up.
is, she takes care of premature and super sick babies. She works in the NICU and she's been to a ton of births. So had she actually been there, my husband would have totally taken the back seat and let her do what she has seen. And I'm
Mhm.
so glad we had that birth moment, just
Mm.
us.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was so glad my physician mother showed up to say, this baby looks normal. She has a great APGAR score.
Yeah.
The I birthed the placenta really easy. It was like two more no big deal contractions, but it was nice to have her like be able to look at it and say, this looks like a whole placenta. I think you're okay.
Yeah. She kind of was your midwife in a sense.
Yes. And then our doula got there, after her, maybe another 10 minutes after Ava was born. And she's like, well, this was the easiest birth I've ever been to. Yes. But she suggested that we go to the hospital because we didn't have a midwife just for like birth certificate purposes and just to have somebody put an eye on us who knew what they were looking at, which was fine. I would have loved to have not gone to the hospital. We got there probably at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, and we were out by noon the next day. Not a
Yeah.
great experience. She told us to bring the placenta so that they could see that it was intact, so they didn't have any question about it. They like lost it the minute we got to the emergency room. I have no idea what happened. I wasn't going to eat it or anything, but I was seriously thinking about planting a tree or something.
And
It
they lose
disappeared.
an organ. Okay, great.
Yes. I mean, we're there for like minutes and we're still in this, like, she's in this beach towel that we had wrapped her up. Like, we haven't cleaned her up or anything. And we're there for a long time before I have to ask for a clean blanket. Like, I don't know. It just felt not very on top of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, this is my disappointment of a hospital. But if that was the worst part of our birth story, I'm very, very happy. And we got to
Yeah.
come home really fast, and then it was just beautiful.
Oh my gosh. So what were your takeaways from this birth?
Oh my gosh. Visualize what you want
Be
because
careful what you wish for.
be careful what you wish for. It might happen exactly like you planned.
Like, talk about when you told me this story, I was like, holy cow, talk about the power of visualization. And this is why I have all my students in the course do this exercise because it's so powerful. But what an incredibly perfect example of literally it working out exactly the way you visualized, not even intentionally, but just like you knew, your spirit knew exactly what you needed. Your
Yeah.
baby needed this birth. You needed this birth for your heart. And the fact that it happened and that our brains are, our minds are so powerful to create reality. And we think that labor just happens to us. We think like we're just at the whim of whatever deck of cards we get dealt. And obviously there are lots of things within birth and labor we can't control, but the amount of power we have as women to visualize and imagine our birth and create our reality. Like your story is such a beautiful example of doing that, that
Thank you.
I love it so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it was incredible. So, the power of visualization, protect your peace. I am
Mm.
a huge advocate of the first 40 days. I
Yeah.
did not do a thing for a month after she was born, and it
Yes,
was
girl.
beautiful. And
As it
uh,
should be.
again, first birth, we had the grandmas coming in town and people coming over, and oh, let's go out to lunch 2 weeks after he's born. And also with him, I had mastitis and like 103-degree fever and like just could not admit how sick I was. It
Hmm.
was awful. And then with her, I felt great, but I was not gonna concede to doing anything. And I protected that, and I think it was so helpful. We watched Daisy Jones and the Six and cuddled all day long for weeks.
Yes, that makes my heart so happy.
Yeah, it was just great. Breastfeeding was a breeze. I mean, just everything. Everything was peaceful, but it all started in the pregnancy. Yeah.
Wow. Do you notice a difference in your kids' temperament having completely different pregnancy and birth experiences?
Yes. And that is where the guilt sits
Mm.
with me, which I'm still working on that. But yes, my son is anxious. He has very severe eczema.
Mm.
He is just moody, but he has been since day one. Breastfeeding was hard. He never slept. I mean, he is 3 years old and just started sleeping through the night. And it's been a challenge. He's brilliant and he's funny and he's wonderful, but he has been sad and anxious and the eczema has been huge. And man, my daughter is as calm as they come. Hasn't
Mm.
been sick once. Breastfeeding was a breeze, like completely different. And I know every kid is different and I don't want to like put it all on one thing, but I mean, it started hard and it has
Yeah.
been hard. So
And
we
that's
had
not
talked
your
a little.
fault. Yeah, we talked about this
Yeah.
and I just empathize with you so much. And so are the women that tell me very, very similar stories of having really hard or traumatic or highly intervention, first hospital births, and then struggling with with the very similar health conditions, or you fill in the blank, like it's all different. But I think, I mean, we don't talk about it, and I certainly don't want to talk about it in a way that puts guilt or shame on moms because we all do what we know is best. We do the best we can with what we know. And most of us don't know. We just don't know what the reality is when we make decisions and when we put ourselves in the care of people who we think they're helping us, we think they're guiding us, we think that they're the experts, and then they yank our babies out and they give us drugs and they create an environment of stress and fear. And we just don't realize, as I think as a society, not just moms, but as a society, we don't realize how the birth experience imprints on babies and that
Mhm.
they're having a human experience and that fear, that anxiety, that trauma, those interventions, that separation between mom and baby impacts because they are conscious, they are awake, alive, they are having their first, I mean, not their first human experience, because I believe even in the womb, they're having human experiences. They're feeling our fears and our concerns and our joy and bathed in our hormones, but how much
Mhm.
more in the labor process, going through such an intense physical transition. I ask that I so honor just your vulnerability in sharing this and in acknowledging like that, yeah, there's still guilt there. And even though as hard as that is, I want women to hear how much it matters. Like that there's women listening to this that haven't considered this, haven't considered how greatly the choices they make in pregnancy and for their birth will or can impact their babies. And I think it's an important conversation to have because so many women, just like you, were like, I didn't know. Nobody told me. I had no idea that
And
this was would happen.
and I thought I knew. I took a birth course. I was ready to go in the natural wing of the hospital. Like I made the playlist. Like I thought I was set up and it just did not go as planned at all. And I have to remind myself that like I did the best I could with the tools I
Yeah,
had and I searched for
absolutely.
tools, but
Yeah.
man, it did not go. And so now that my daughter is a year old and I'm kind of out of this newborn haze, I feel like this next, I don't know, area of growth maybe that I want to put energy into is figuring out how to, like, I don't know, apologize to my son or make it up to him or just work through some of this trauma with him. Because when I think about his birth, I can feel it all over my body. I mean, it was
Mm,
24 hours of intense pain. Like, that
yeah.
is trauma.
Yeah.
And I can
I,
feel it. And man, if that's what I was feeling and that's the reaction I have remembering it, I can only imagine what that was like for him feeling those same contractions for so long.
yeah. Your body keeps the score. Yeah, absolutely. Like, and the fact that you can imagine that right away, it shows like your body's still carrying it somatically, and his body is probably carrying it somatically. Just as a thank you for coming on this show, I want to give you my healing birth trauma course because that's exactly why I created that course is for
Thank
women
you.
just like you who have this experience and they know like I am carrying trauma in my body from a birth experience. And even it doesn't have to be birth, it could be sexual abuse, it could be some other traumatic thing that happened that you just know like my body is carrying this and I need to release it. And I I am so passionate about helping women find freedom. And I know that like not just for our own bodies and our freedom, but also our children. Because when we discover freedom, there's an energetic connection to our babies. And
Hmm.
even without like going through and doing a bunch of stuff, they will get like the reverberal effects of your freedom and release of that trauma, and they will feel that impact their body too. And then I include like prayers and declarations that you can speak over them to intentionally help them release their trauma because babies will tell the story of their trauma through colic, eczema, crying, neediness, like irritability, anxiety, like babies tell the story and we just label it colic. We just label it, digestive issues, but like they're telling the story of their trauma. And when we let them tell it and then we create that security and attachment for them and actually recreate the attachment they didn't get through that birth experience, it just breaks off the anxiety and the trauma, and we see babies heal. We see health conditions reverse. And so I have such a heart for mamas because I feel like the enemy is just so intent on attacking this process, this birth experiences. And if he can get moms and babies when they're young, when they're vulnerable, when they're going through this transition of birth and into motherhood, and if he can attack them young and create fear and insecurity and doubt and disrupt this really sacred attachment moms and babies are meant to have, he's trying to disrupt, our lives, our childhoods, our beginning as mothers. But but the truth is that we can heal it. We can release it. And it's whatever happened in those birth experiences that are traumatic are not set in stone. Our minds are so pliable, are so malleable. The neuroplasticity of our brains to hold memory and release memory and change and rewire is so brilliant. And God knows how to heal it. And there's nothing that's happened, whether that's you or anyone listening, that is set in stone, that can't be
Yeah.
healed by God. So I want to give you that course, and anyone else
Thank
who's
you.
interested, I'll put the link for it in my show notes because I'm so passionate about helping women heal and redeem their birth experiences, even the ones that were painful and hard and traumatic. And I believe God is doing an amazing work. And I've heard so many stories of women just finding healing and freedom in that. So
That sounds incredible. Man, talk about the enemy attacking a moment. I mean, we don't have like coming of age experiences in our culture like I feel like maybe traditionally we used to.
yeah,
Like what, going to college? I don't know. But this moment of birth is such a transformation when a girl becomes a woman. Not that
yeah,
you have to have a baby to become a fully embodied woman, but it is a transition like no other.
yeah. It's like the
And
maiden to becoming a mother.
yes, and of course, the enemy is going to want to get into that moment. And I think, no, I know in my first pregnancy, there was a part of my head that truly believed there's part of you that is evil and you deserve to have a painful birth.
Wow.
Women, this is our curse, and
Yeah.
you are not perfect, and this is how you're going to pay for it
Wow.
because of, I don't know, the fall and everything. And it's just so unhelpful and just can't be true. But even though maybe my brain knew it wasn't totally true, my subconscious was not convinced yet. And I think
Hmm.
that also played a part in my first pregnancy.
Yeah. Holy
Just,
cow. Wow. Absolutely. That's a remarkable that you knew, probably not even consciously, but subconsciously, like, this is my cross to bear. This is my burden to bear. I'm a woman. It's supposed to be painful. And that played out in your
mhm.
labor with your first of these excruciating contractions. And then we just repeat this story in society. We tell other women our birth stories and we tell other women how painful it is. And it just becomes this cultural norm.
Yeah.
This is what childbirth is. And how, like, again, another testament to how powerful your
Your
mind
mind
is,
is, yeah. And I think you even
for better
talk
or
about that
worse.
a little bit, that this pain in childbirth, maybe it isn't pain, maybe it's sorrow, maybe it's the pain of being exposed to an imperfect world. I
Yeah.
might not be getting that totally right, but
Yeah. Well, the translation, when it says in that that story, and I feel like I need a whole podcast episode on this because it's one of the most common questions I get because women always obviously ask, like, well, what about it says in the Bible it's supposed to be painful and Eve was cursed, and there's a lot of, pieces to that story that we misunderstand because first of all, God never cursed Eve. He didn't curse her body. He cursed the ground and he cursed the serpent, but he never cursed Adam and Eve directly. And secondly, the word used there for pain when it describes like you will have pain in childbirth, it does say that, but it's a poor translation. That word asab in the original is not translated pain anywhere else in scripture, and it's used several other times. It's almost always translated grief or sorrow or toil. In fact, they use it in the very next verse where it says that Adam will toil the ground. It's the same word. But the translators chose toil for the man and pain for the woman. Just because of bias, just because of, well,
Of course
that,
they did.
like it's, and we need to know, like the translation is not inspired. The original like words are inspired, but we have to always be conscious of how are things being translated based on modern day culture or the translator's culture of that time. And were the original intentions of those words? What's the historical context? What's the language context? So there's so much depth to those scriptures. And we as a culture have twisted them and then put this like diagnosis on women that you have to have pain in childbirth, which is not actually what it says. And so I believe it really has more just to do with, yes, it is hard. We are born into a world that is fallen, that is still broken. The world around us is still very much broken and in pain, and there is suffering and there is evil. And we are redeemed by the blood of Christ. And we are not, as a woman, I am not under the curse. As a woman, my body is not cursed. And that's the differentiator here. It's like, yes, we live in a world that has sickness and pain and suffering. And when we renew our minds in Christ and we realize the truth of who we're created to be, I am not broken. I am redeemed. He has set me free in Christ, and I no longer live under the curse, and I live above. He says we're seated in heavenly places. We are not subject to the natural laws of this earth. We are citizens of heaven. And it's a full mindset shift. It's not just, oh, Jesus broke every curse. Yes, he did. But that curse that happened in Adam and Eve, that reality is still our reality on earth, but we are not subject to it. We are called to live above the laws of the curse on the earth, and it's in the world around us. But as Christians, we are called to bring heaven to earth. And that's the greater reality I connect to. So it's not just as simple as Jesus
Amen.
broke the curse, right? It's like, yes, but the earth is still suffering. But
Yeah.
we are called as heavenly creatures. We are called as citizens of heaven. We are not cursed. As a woman, I am free and I reign in life. And that is the truth I embody, which means my body is created in God's image. I am not under any curse from the garden. I am redeemed. And so that's my perspective. I've learned and grown so much in this, and even in how I teach it. And I used to, align with the people who just said, oh yeah, Jesus broke the curse. And then I'd see women who are not even Christians who have completely different belief systems have pain-free births. And I'm like, it's more than that. There's an awakening, this like a revelation happening in women to realize like that's a lie. Like I am not cursed. And when we can break that off, like just like you did, going from believing that, oh, childbirth is supposed to be painful and my body is cursed and this is my burden to bear, and literally having 24 hours of intensely painful contractions, to no, childbirth can be easy. Childbirth can be quick and painless, and experiencing both of those realities. The
Yeah.
holy cow, like the power we have as women to create our reality with Christ. What a beautiful story. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
sharing,
you.
because it's such an incredible testimony. And I hope so many women are encouraged by it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you for giving me the language to think this way. And man, girls, just believe you are incredible and believe in peace, because it is possible. Even if your husband wants to take you to the hospital, you can do whatever you want. Just dream it and it will be.
Amen. What a beautiful place to land. Thank you, ladies, for listening. And I'll put your contacts in the show notes. Anyone who wants to reach out to you directly, what's your Instagram, or what's the best way for women to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm super active on Instagram. It's jessie.l.ritter, Jessie.l.ritter. I'm actually a musician, so most of what you see there is going to be shows and music. I'm on Spotify, but I'm mostly a mom. So you'll see
Oh,
a lot of pictures of my very pretty kiddos too.
amazing. Reach out to Jessie, contact her, tell her how this podcast impacted you. Tell me how this podcast impacted you. Leave us a 5-star review if this inspired you at all. We don't promote things on this show. I just do this as a gift to you because I truly want to impact the world and change the culture of birth. And so if this has inspired you or impacted you, please, I would just love it if you took a minute and wrote us a quick review. That would mean so much to me to just reciprocate that generosity. You guys mean the world to me. I love being able to show up here every week and deliver and inspire because I know how much these birth stories have impacted me, that Jessie is here because she was impacted by them. And so that is the heart in which we come. And so thank you everyone for supporting, for listening, for sharing it on your social media, and for rating. We just love you, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Pain-Free Birth Podcast. If you were encouraged, it would mean so much if you left us a 5-star review and shared this with your community. I'd love to connect with you on Instagram at Pain-Free Birth. And to learn more about the Pain-Free Birth e-course, free resources, private coaching, and upcoming events, find out more at painfreebirth.com. See you next week.